Born in Barrio Logan, David Alvarez was the first in his family to graduate from high school and then college. Alvarez won a seat on San Diego City Council in 2010, and now he's running for mayor. KPBS Metro reporter Sandia Dirks has further details from her time with him on the campaign trail. Sandia, welcome back.
Thank you.
Well, tell us about what you've learned of Alvarez's political awakening.
Well, every politician has this kind of origin story. And for Alvarez, it dates back to when he was 13. He was taking summer classes at UCSD, and one day the teacher took them on a field trip. So they were on this field trip to learn about health impacts and the community. And lo and behold, they went into his home neighborhood of Barrio Logan.
They stopped in front of my house because of the two machine shops that are on either side of the homes, and one in particular being the plating shop that was the big heavy polluter. And we stopped there, and obviously I'm the only one who knows where we're at, so it's sort of like intrigue a little bit, and also kind of cool because we're in my neighborhood until he starts talking about how the health impacts, kids suffering from asthma, and all the negative impacts that come with that coexistence of industry and residential. And then when the young man a few rows up calls out and says, "Why would anybody want to live here?" And that was the moment that was sort of, wow, like I felt very ashamed, actually.
So he's saying he was a little bit ashamed, but it was also something else for him.
It was a real epiphany moment for him because he really saw the disparity in neighborhoods, and he kind of promised to fix that in his life.
Yeah, okay. Where did he go? So he gets this feeling and he's like, wow, I'm a little bit ashamed, but also I'm going to do something about it. Where did he go from there?
Well, one of the things that he did is at the age of 15, he actually became an AIDS and pregnancy counselor in his neighborhood. He also started going to community meetings to talk about the environment. He really kind of got radicalized at a young age. And this was like a young man who had older brothers who were involved in gangs and sort of violence. And here he was, trying to make a difference.
At this point, was his family involved in politics at all?
He says that they weren't. He says that his family, they were very hardworking, but very quiet, and that they didn't really always sort of raise their political voice in protest. But he says there are ways in which they lived social justice.
My mom and dad, who always, helped out in whichever way they could. So that maybe is what, that's where it comes from, that we're having this, therapy session. It's my mom and my dad always. People needed a place to stay, there was a place to stay. They needed food to eat, there was always food. My mom always had this way of making enough food for everybody and then some.
So he talks fondly of his childhood. What does he say about how his childhood affects him as a city councilman, his policies, his political beliefs?
Well, it definitely affects him. His talk of neighborhoods and of underserved neighborhoods. And even when he talks about his family looking out for others, he also tells a story about when he was a senior in high school and his family lost their home. And for a little while, he says he was homeless for all intents and purposes. And so he thinks about things when he's talking about the homeless shelter in Barrio Logan or other kinds of services. He really is somebody that was very much made from the circumstances that he came from being Latino, from being poor, from having those brushes with homelessness, and from living in a neighborhood that really was sort of ignored by city council and government.
And some people have actually challenged his brush with homelessness. What are they saying about that?
Well, he wasn't in a shelter and he wasn't technically homeless, and it was for his the second semester of his senior year. He ended up staying at a family of a friend's house.
And in a car for a while. Seems kind of homeless.
There were a couple of nights in a car. So, it wasn't one of those things where he didn't have places to go. In the end, he did. He had enough of a community to support him. But, people say, well, he's stretching the truth. But for him, he says, look, what it really got me to understand was that even with both of my parents working full-time, they couldn't afford a place to live. And that's the take-home message for him.
And that's what he understood on that. What's being said about his chances of winning?
Well, I've talked to several political scientists, including UCSD's Steve Erie, who talks about this kind of election. This is going to be a low turnout election. Traditionally, a special election is. In low turnout elections, that means what you're going to get is people who are older, people who tend to be more conservative. So it doesn't favor the kind of progressive politics that Alvarez is espousing. Now, if he can capture some of that Filner coalition, Latinos, African Americans, and sort of progressives, the South of 8 crowd, he might have a chance. But he's really going to have to get them out to the polls. And he's really going to have to get them to know just who he is. And that's a struggle in a short election.
Well, thank you for your insight. KPBS Metro reporter Sandia Dirks. Thanks so much.